What's up guys, welcome back. Thanks for checking out another video. I'm gonna pick up where I left off in the last video, which was yesterday. I did edit that video and it's posting today, so we'll see how long it takes me to get the next video out, but I'm gonna do my best to try to get as many of these videos out in a row as possible. This is like the most ambitious thing I've done on YouTube, so let me know what you guys think. I am gonna continue working away. The only thing I've done so far today is added a second jack stand because one jack stand was a little wobbly for my liking. If I'm gonna be wrenching on this car, or this engine I should say. Now it's like super solid. It doesn't move, so I can wrench with confidence. So in this service position, let's call it, I like that word, it makes it very easy to work on this engine. You don't have to drop it out, you don't have to empty out any of the fluids. All the lines have enough slack, nothing's tight or pulling on anything. You can easily work on this without fully removing the engine, without draining any fluids, just undoing a few simple connections. Ultimately, you don't want to have to be wrenching on this car, but if you do, this is pretty easy to work on. Considering it is a Porsche and they are not easy to work on. Like, the access to the engine bay is super small. So I think this is a good solution, but either way, let me know what you guys think in the comments, if you think this is a good solution or not. So the plan of attack for today, I think, is gonna be, I might remove this charge pipe just to get out of the way. Then I can remove the throttle body and the intake manifold plenum. That'll give you a bit more room, and then I can remove this old wiring harness. And then from there, I guess I'll bring out the new wiring harness and the conversion harness, all the stuff we've been working on for the Link ECU stuff. I'll share that stuff with you guys, and then I'll start reassembling everything. So I think that's the general idea for how this is gonna go. We'll see how long this takes me and how well I can document it, because that video, the one I just released, that was probably like, for me, that would have been like an hour's worth of work, but it took like a whole day to like film and capture, and so, I don't know. Making these YouTube videos is super rewarding, but it is extremely time consuming. It makes everything take like 4 or 5 times as long as it should. So anyways, that's probably enough rambling. Let's see how this all works out today. All right, so I've got the throttle body off, and accessing the intake manifold plenum bolts from the top are easy. There's like 10 bolts total holding the plenum onto the intake manifold, 5 on the top, 5 on the bottom. The 5 on the top are super easy. The 5 on the bottom are not as easy. And I was gonna just try to get it from the bottom, but I actually think it might be easier from the top if I just undo the power steering pump, move it to the side, and then remove the alternator. Then I should be able to get my arms in underneath the intake manifold from the top. So the ironic part is, like, this is my car and I assembled it 3 years ago and I haven't had to do any work on it. So now I'm just kind of experimenting on how best to access things and service things as I go, which is kind of cool to me, and I find it super interesting. Fairly simple to work on, so far I'm pretty happy with how things are turning out, but let's see how it goes if I remove the belt and the accessories, and let's see if this makes it easier to remove this intake manifold plenum. All right, I think that's given me the access that I need. Power steering pump is out of the way, still connected with its line, so I haven't lost any fluids. Alternator I've just undone, and I'm gonna push it out of the way. And I think That'll give me the access to the bolts on the underside that I need so I can get this plenum off without too much headache. So I'm just gonna continue on and we'll see how this all works out. All right, success. Intake manifold plenum is off. So all that's left on here is the Skunk 2 intake manifold runners. What I've removed is the spacer and the plenum that I created. This specific one was a Skunk 2 one originally that we chopped the throttle body flange off, made our own throttle body flange, welded that on, and then we machined a 2-inch spacer to space it out enough to clear the power steering pump. And that worked really well, and it put the throttle body in a spot that cleared the power steering, cleared all the accessories, and was easily accessible by the charge pipe that we had running through there. So now with the intake manifold plenum off, I can work towards taking off the wiring harness that's on this car. The wiring harness is connected to the car via 2 bulkhead connectors back here. And so I'm just gonna undo those and then start unplugging things. And then I think I've used a bunch of zip ties to secure the harness to the engine. So I'm gonna have to cut all those. It shouldn't be too bad, but let's see how it turns out. All right, wiring harness is almost all ready to come out. One of the last things I need to do is disconnect these bulkhead connectors, which are pretty cool. You basically just spin them and they come out. These are kind of like mil-spec connectors, but OEM, technically they're OEM BMW. These are BMW bulkhead connectors off of like an E30, I think it was. Porsche uses the same connectors, but I'm glad they did. They make life super easy. So I think everything is undone and I can pull this harness out now. All right, success. Wiring harness is out, intake plenum is out, engine bay is ready for the new parts. I might try to clean it up a little bit since everything is kind of out and apart. Just wipe it down. If I had an extra valve cover, I would definitely install it right now, run one of my production ones, but I sold all the ones I had and I'm waiting for the next batch to show up from the machine shop. But wiring harness. This is the original wiring harness I created like over 3 years ago. It has worked perfectly and I've learned a lot since making this one. The new one's gonna be much nicer. It will have proper sheathing. This was kind of like sheathed after the fact and did the job, but it could always be improved upon. So now that this is out, let me grab the new harness that was gonna replace this and I'll show you what we've created. All right, on the ground here is the new wiring harness. There's the old one. This is the new one to work with the link. This is basically a prototype of the final version of the wiring harness. So all the pinouts worked out, all the connectors worked out, but unsheathed. It will eventually have sheathing on it. Probably not this one, but going forward, they will all be sheathed and they will all be labeled like this with yellow labels so everyone knows where things go. But this one is not sheathed, so that if I do need to make any adjustments or corrections on the car, I don't have to deal with the sheathing. So this is for test fitting. So we're gonna test fit this one, see how it fits on the car, because I did just prototype it on this development 911, but we'll see how it works in practice with everything installed, whereas the prototype car didn't have completely everything installed. So there might be slight differences, but that's why we are doing this today, to see how this works and then finally connect it and get it up and running with the Link ECU. So might as well start installing this guy. All right, so wiring harness is installed for the most part. Some of it needs to be taken care of once I get the intake manifold all back together. This prototype wiring harness is installed for the most part, secured for the most part, and I am very happy with how it's turned out. All that's really left to do now is install my new intake manifold with the Porsche throttle body, and then I can finish the final connections up underneath the intake manifold. But in order to install the new intake manifold plenum, I have to transfer some stuff over from the old one. All right, so on the bench here is the old intake manifold plenum. So it has the intake air temperature sensor. We've got to transfer that over. It also has a vacuum port. Have to transfer that over. So over here, I have the new intake manifold plenum and spacer. My original one, they are sealed with gasket maker. I'm gonna do the same for this one. All the surfaces are machined, nice and true. Gasket maker worked perfectly on my car for 3 years. So I gotta transfer over those two little components, and then we can install this on my car. Thread sealant. All right, so plenum is all prepped. Now it's the messy part, dealing with like gasket maker. Because it's like in the engine bay, this is gonna be a pain. If the engine was out of the car and like I was doing this as assembling it, it wouldn't be too bad at all, but I feel this is gonna be messy. Let's see how this turns out. All right, so the pressure's on. I'm going to try to apply all the gasket maker and install it while capturing all of this on the camera, which makes things like so much more difficult. So let's see how this turns out. All right, time to get it on the car. All right, now the really fun part is putting this all together in the car by myself while trying to capture it on camera. All right, camera says total of 23 minutes to do that. Super happy with how this is turning out so far. This I knew was gonna be my least favorite part to install because it's an awkward position and you're trying to access it through this tiny little opening, but it wasn't terrible. Only took 23 minutes according to the timer on the video. Next up is throttle body, final connections, and then I can connect the link ECU for the first time with this wiring harness and make sure I've done everything correctly. All right guys, so same deal with the Porsche throttle body. This is the stock drive-by-wire Porsche Bosch throttle body off of my original engine. It is 74 millimeters. There's no gasket for it. Same deal, I'm gonna put gasket maker on here. Pros and cons to this. I find whenever I need a gasket, I can't get one. So because they're both machine surface and you just use gasket maker, you never have to worry about not having a gasket. So same deal, apply a little bit of gasket maker, and then we're gonna go put it on the car. I got new stainless steel fasteners, so let's go put it on the car. All right, throttle body is on. Now I can reattach the alternator and then the power steering pump, then make the final connections to the wiring harness and sensors underneath the intake manifold. Then we're all done basically, I think. Why don't I take care of the alternator and the power steering pump? All right guys, there we have it. Everything is back together. Wiring harness is fully attached. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to do all of this all over again. Once the wiring harness is finalized, then I'll have to come back and take this wiring harness off and put a production one on. For now, we're gonna test out this wiring harness, make sure everything works as it's intended to. At this point, everything is connected. So I'm actually gonna leave the engine as it is and connect the link ECU and just verify everything is wired correctly. So at this point, I think that's all that's left. But first, I'm gonna show you what we've actually created for this plug and play solution. All right guys, so on the bench here, I have our Link G4X Fury X ECU wiring solution. That's gonna be the plug and play solution for these 911s with K-swaps and the Porsche Boxsters and the Cayman S's. So we are gonna be using a Link G4X Fury X standalone ECU with a custom plug and play harness. Will and I have been working on this piece for a while. What we've created is an actual printed circuit board based on our pinouts for our specific application for the wiring harness. And what it does is allows you to plug in the original Porsche connectors. So this is basically a Porsche ECU connector. It allows us to plug the original Porsche ECU connectors into there, and it converts everything over to the Link G4X ECU. Over here, I have the original ECU that I was running. This is the Cyvex S7 Plus ECU with their conversion harness for the 997 Turbo, technically. Turbo and non-turbo cars have very similar wiring, so I used a turbo plug and play Cyvex kit, modified it accordingly to suit my needs. This ECU is super flexible, so they were able to help me modify the ECU actually internally, so it would work with the Honda ignition coils, and I revised all the pinouts and everything to work with my K-swap. So the Cyvex is a fantastic ECU, and they're an amazing company to work with, just like Link, but this ECU, I believe, is like $7,000 or something like that for retail, around there. And this ECU, I believe, is around $2,000, so significantly more economical. So this is a prototype version. We're gonna make a case and then fill this case basically with like a potting liquid, and it isolates it and protects the circuit board and all the connections from vibration and shorting out. So right now it's just sitting in a 3D printed case that I whipped up. There'll be a production version of this case, and then we'll put the printed circuit board in there and then pour the potting fluid in, and it'll lock it in place. So I'm gonna plug it into the car. I'll show you what it's like to plug it into the car. Then it's time to plug in my laptop and go through the base map and check everything and make sure I got everything right. So let's see how that goes. All right guys, so to access the stock ECU, on a Porsche 997 and a 996. The stock ECU is actually behind the rear seats, underneath some sound deadening, and if you have the subwoofer, it's under the subwoofer. So I've already dismantled all that stuff to access it. And these are the stock plugs. So those stock plugs will clip into our conversion harness, and then our conversion harness will plug into the link. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this while recording it. All right, guys, so like I said, a stock Porsche ECU connector allows you to plug in all the original Porsche ECU wiring connectors, like so. And then we can plug in the link to the board. And there we have it. A plug-and-play ECU solution for Porsche 997s. This is 997. There's going to be a slightly different one for the 996s because the wiring is just ever so slightly different. But I think that's probably about it for this video, guys. I'm glad that we were able to show you this wiring plug-in conversion solution, wiring harness install. In the next video, I think I want to try to get the car up and running. Maybe go through the base map, show you guys what this is all capable of. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you like it, do me a favor, hit that like button. If you haven't already, consider subscribing, and I will continue to keep making these videos for you guys. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye now.